Welcome to English Podcasts. Relax and enjoy your listening practice.
I still remember the sound the plane made right before it hit the trees. It wasn't a loud explosion like in movies. It was worse, a long, shaking scream of metal and wind, like the world itself was tearing apart. The engine coughed, the pilot swore, and then the forest rushed toward us. I didn't even have time to pray. I just held the armrest and waited for the end. But the end didn't come. When I opened my eyes, everything was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like snow. My head was ringing, and my mouth tasted like blood. For a second, I couldn't move. Then I heard someone groan. "Alex?" a voice said. It was Dennis. He was sitting a few meters away, half covered in broken branches and pieces of the seat. His face was pale, and his jacket was torn, but he was alive. We crawled out of the wreckage like animals. The plane was a small one, just for short flights, a light aircraft that people used to travel between towns in the north. We were supposed to reach a mining camp by evening. Instead, we were lying in the middle of the taiga, surrounded by endless trees. The pilot was dead. We didn't say it out loud, but we both knew. Dennis stared at the body for a moment, then looked away. I did the same. There was no time for grief. The air was already colder than it should have been, and the sky was turning gray. We checked what we had: a lighter, one knife, a small first aid kit, 2 bottles of water, half full, some chocolate bars crushed into pieces, and a radio that didn't work. That was it. Dennis sat on a fallen log and held his ribs. "I think I broke something," he said. "Can you walk?" "I can walk," he answered, but his voice sounded more like a question. We stayed near the crash for an hour, hoping someone would come, hoping we would hear a helicopter. But the forest swallowed every sound. Even the wind felt far away. In the end, I said what we were both thinking. We need to move. If we stay here, we'll freeze. Dennis nodded slowly. He didn't argue. Maybe he couldn't. So we started walking. The taiga is not like other forests. It doesn't feel friendly. It doesn't feel alive in a warm way. It feels ancient, like it was here long before humans and will stay long after we're gone. The trees are tall, dark, and close together. The ground is soft and wet, and every direction looks the same. After 2 hours, Dennis was breathing heavily. He stopped often, leaning on his knees, and I could see the pain in his eyes. "We can't go much longer," he said. I wanted to answer with something strong, something heroic, but I had nothing. Then we heard water. At first, it was just a whisper, but as we moved forward, it became clearer, the sound of a river. We followed it like it was a voice calling us, and then we saw it, a wide river, cold and fast, cutting through the forest like a knife. The water was dark, and the air above it felt even colder, but it was water, and water meant life. We walked along the bank of the river, hoping to find a path or maybe a fishing camp, and that's when we found the house. It was half hidden behind trees, old and leaning slightly to one side. The roof was covered with moss, and the windows were broken. The door was hanging open. Dennis stopped and stared. "No way," he whispered. I didn't believe it either. In the middle of nowhere, a house. Not a cabin for tourists, not a new camp. This place looked like it had been abandoned for years. We stepped inside carefully. The smell hit us first. Old wood, damp air, and something else, like time itself. There was a table, a stove, and a few rusty tools, a broken chair, an empty shelf. On the wall, someone had carved names into the wood. I couldn't read them clearly, but I knew it meant one thing. People had lived here before. We found a small pile of dry firewood in the corner. It was like the forest had given us a gift. I used the lighter and started a fire in the stove.
The flame was weak at first, then stronger. Soon the room filled with warmth. Dennis sat near the stove and sighed. "I thought we were dead," he said quietly. I didn't answer. I was thinking the same thing. That night, we didn't sleep much. Every sound outside made me open my eyes. The house creaked, and the river never stopped moving. Dennis kept coughing. I kept listening. On the morning, we were hungry. The chocolate was gone. The water was low. We needed real food. "Fish?" I said. Dennis looked at the river. "With what?" he asked. I searched the house again. Behind the stove, I found an old fishing line tangled like a spider web. In a drawer, I found 2 hooks. One was bent, but the other looked usable. It wasn't much, but it was something. I made a simple fishing rod from a branch. Dennis helped, even though he moved slowly. His hands were shaking, but his eyes were focused. "If we don't eat, we won't last," he said. We sat by the river for hours. The water was cold enough to hurt just by looking at it. At first, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, the line moved. I pulled hard. A fish jumped out of the water, small, silver, fighting like it wanted to live as much as we did. I grabbed it with both hands. It slipped, hit my jacket, then finally stayed still. Dennis laughed. A real laugh. The first one since the crash. "We're not dying today," he said. We cooked the fish over the fire. The smell filled the room, and for a moment the house felt like a home. We ate slowly, carefully. It wasn't delicious, but it was food. It was life. That afternoon, we heard something else. A heavy sound. Not the wind, not the river. Footsteps. Dennis froze. "What is that?" he whispered. I didn't want to say it, but I knew. "Bear," I said. The footsteps came closer. Then we heard a low, deep breath. Something scratched the outside wall. The whole house seemed to shrink around us. Dennis grabbed the knife. His hands were shaking worse now. "We can't fight a bear," he said. "I know," I answered. The bear sniffed near the door. We could hear it clearly. It was huge. The sound of its breathing was slow and calm, like it wasn't afraid of anything, like it knew this forest belonged to it. I looked around and saw an old metal pot on the table. An idea came to me. I picked it up, then grabbed a rusty spoon. Dennis stared at me like I was insane. "What are you doing?" "Trust me," I whispered. The bear stepped into the doorway. For a second, we saw it. Dark fur, massive shoulders, eyes that didn't look angry, just curious, like we were strange animals in its territory. And then I hit the pot as hard as I could. The sound exploded through the small house like a gunshot. The bear jumped back instantly. Dennis shouted. I hit the pot again, even harder. The bear made a deep sound, almost like a growl, and backed away. It turned and ran into the trees. I stood there breathing like I had been underwater. Dennis sat down on the floor. "I hate you," he said, and then he laughed again. That night, we blocked the door with the table and the stove tools. We kept the fire burning. We didn't talk much. There was nothing to say. On the third day, we saw a helicopter. It was far away at first, just a dot above the trees, but it grew bigger. The sound reached us like music. We ran outside and waved our jackets. Dennis screamed until his voice broke. The helicopter circled once, then lowered near the river. 2 rescue men jumped out. "You guys are lucky," one of them said. I wanted to answer with something smart, something funny, but I just nodded, because luck had nothing to do with it. We survived because we kept moving, because we found the river, because we found the house, because we worked together, because we refused to lie down and wait for the cold to finish the job, and because in that endless dark taiga, life still gave us a few chances. Not many, but enough.